In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, life is often described as a cheap commodity. Trillions of souls are ground to dust in the endless, unforgiving gears of the Imperial war machine. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of the Imperium's brutal economy. Life is not cheap. It is simply a raw material. And what happens when that material finally expires? What happens when your body inevitably gives out on the manufacturing floor or in the suffocating depths of a towering hive city? Consider this. In a sane, peaceful galaxy, death brings rest. It brings burial, mourning, and a quiet, dignified return to the earth. But the Imperium of Man does not have the luxury of sanity. It is a decaying empire besieged from without by monstrous xenos and demons, and rotting from within through absolute stagnation. On worlds where the population is measured in the hundreds of billions, there is no soil for graves. There is no space for monuments. There is only the eternal hunger of the hive. When you die in the lightless underhive, your soul may belong to the master of mankind, but your flesh belongs to the Imperial Corpse Guilds. Your lifeless remains are not viewed as a tragedy. They are logged as a vital asset. You are a walking repository of calcium, water, and essential organic proteins. To let you rot in the streets would be a crime against humanity's survival itself. Your body is collected, weighed, and stripped of anything valuable, preparing you for the final, gruesome stage of your eternal service. Now imagine the sheer, incomprehensible scale of this grim industry. Entire planetary economies are built upon the ceaseless recycling of human remains. The dead must feed the living, so the living can toil, die, and eventually feed the next desperate generation. It is a closed loop of horrific, unyielding utilitarianism. Welcome to the Silent Imperium. If you wish to uncover more harrowing truths of the Warhammer 40K universe, make sure to subscribe and join our ranks. The galaxy is dark, and we are its chroniclers. Before we descend into the rusted, blood-stained processing lines and explore the immense political power of these macabre institutions, we must first understand the environment that makes such butchery necessary. We must look at the suffocating ecosystem of the Hive World. To comprehend the necessity of the Corpse Guilds, you must first understand the architectural nightmares known as Hive Worlds. These are not planets in any traditional sense. They are planet-wide tombs of steel and concrete. A single hive spire can pierce the toxic clouds of the upper atmosphere, housing billions of souls in its claustrophobic, labyrinthine depths. On these worlds, the very concept of nature has been violently erased. There are no rolling plains of wheat, no vast oceans teeming with fish, and no clean, drinkable water. The biosphere was annihilated millennia ago, replaced by an endless sprawl of manufacturings, hablocks, and transit arteries. The air is heavily filtered, thick with the taste of ozone, promethium exhaust, and the sweat of billions. Every single resource required to sustain human life must be meticulously managed, imported, or synthesized from existing waste. You might believe that the greatest threat to an imperial citizen is a sudden invasion of tyrants, a demonic incursion, or a brutal raid by the Drukhari. But the truth is far more mundane and pervasive. The true enemy of the hive is starvation. Hunger is a quiet, relentless predator that claims more lives in the lower decks than any Xeno's weapon. When supply lines from agri-worlds falter due to warp storms, the hive must look inward to survive. An agri-world might be light years away, its massive cargo ships braving the treacherous tides of the Imperium just to deliver grain to a starving population. But warp travel is notoriously unreliable. A single temporal anomaly could delay a food fleet by decades, or wipe it from existence entirely. When the grain silos run empty, a hive of 100 billion people will consume itself in days. The resulting riots would tear the planet apart, inviting chaos and total planetary collapse. This fragile logistical thread is the exact reason why complete self-sufficiency is not just an ideal, but a brutal imperative. The Imperium cannot allow a world to die simply because the crops failed on a neighboring system. Thus, the administration turns its gaze toward the only abundant resource remaining on a Hive world: the citizens themselves. Every day, millions die from disease, industrial accidents, exhaustion, or gang violence. This staggering daily death toll creates mountains of biological matter. To an outsider, it is a tragedy. To the Adeptus Administratum, it is a harvest. The mathematics of survival are cold and uncompromising. You cannot import enough food to feed everyone forever, but you can certainly process the dead to feed the living today. This is the genesis of Corpse-Starch, the tasteless, gray, nutrient-dense paste that keeps the heart of the Imperium beating. It is a perfect, self-sustaining loop of misery. The population is sustained by the recycled essence of their predecessors. When you eat your daily ration in the Underhive, you are consuming the distilled, processed remains of your neighbors, your friends, and your ancestors. There is no horror in this act for the Hive dweller. It is simply the taste of survival. To the uninitiated, the term Corpse Guild might conjure images of lowly scavengers, desperate mutants picking through the ruins for scraps of bone and meat. You could not be more wrong. The Corpse Guilds are not bottom feeders. They are apex predators of the Imperial economy. They are immensely powerful cartels, holding absolute monopolies over the collection, processing, and distribution of human remains. On worlds like Necromunda, they are known as the Mercator Pallidus, and they are pale. Masked representatives wield more actual influence than many planetary nobles. Their power stems from a simple, undeniable fact. They control the food supply, while the Water Guild controls hydration, and the Prometheum Guild dictates energy. The Corpse Guilds manage the very sustenance that keeps the Hive's workforce standing. This grants them a terrifying degree of political leverage. A Corpse Guild master can starve a rebellious subsector into submission simply by rerouting a few shipments of Corpse-Starch. They do not need armies to enforce their will. They only need to close their massive, rusted silo doors. Because of this critical role, the guilds are heavily sanctioned and protected by the Adeptus Administratum. The sprawling bureaucracy of the Imperium recognizes that the corpse tithe is just as vital as the planetary tithe of Laskans or Imperial Guard regiments. The Administratum sets strict quotas for biomatter collection. Every level of the Hive, every hablock, and every manufactorum is expected to yield a specific tonnage of dead flesh per standard month. The ledgers must balance, even if the currency is human marrow. But what happens when a sector fails to meet its death quota? What if, by some miracle, the population is too healthy? All the local gang wars have been too quiet. The Corpse Guilds do not care for excuses. A quota is a legally binding contract in the eyes of the Imperium. If the natural death rate is insufficient to meet the demand for protein, the guilds will demand their due regardless. This often leads to dark, unspoken arrangements with local enforcers or underworld syndicates to artificially inflate the body count. This is where the Adeptus Arbites step in. The arbitrators do not merely police theft or heresy. They enforce the guild's absolute monopoly on the dead. To bury a body privately is a crime. To burn a corpse in a makeshift pyre is to steal from the Emperor's supply chain. Anyone caught hoarding the dead or running illegal bootleg processing vats faces immediate and brutal execution. In the eyes of Imperial law, wasting biological material is tantamount to treason against the survival of the human species. The internal hierarchy of these guilds is a macabre mirror of the Administratum itself. You have bone scriveners who tally the weight of skeleton, flesh factors who negotiate the price of rendered fat, and pale consorts who oversee the colossal grinding facilities. These individuals are born into the guild, raised among the dead, and taught to view human anatomy merely as a breakdown of valuable compounds. They wear masks of white porcelain or iron to distance themselves from the stench, moving like ghosts through the bustling, desperate hive. The wealth amassed by these guilds is staggering. While the under-hive workers staff, the masters of the MACABRE Pallidus dwell in opulent, sanitized estates. They wear robes woven from imported silks and dine on real, unrecycled meats imported from distant agri-worlds. It is a sickening paradox. The very people who oversee the grinding of human bones into gruel are the ones who never have to taste it. Their immense fortunes are literally built upon the compressed, processed remains of their less fortunate brethren. Now, look at the physical architecture of their power. The processing plants of the Corpse Guilds are colossal structures, dominating entire sectors of the mid-hive. They are easily identifiable by the perpetual, thick smog of cremation and boiling vats that spew from their heavy smokestacks. Massive, armored transport trains, known as corpse trains, constantly rumble through the transit arteries, carrying millions of tons of raw material from the lower depths up to the rendering manufacturers. The sound of their engines is the heartbeat of the hive's economy. Within the ecclesiarchy, this grim business is given a veneer of holy purpose. The priests of the ministerium often bless the processing vats, declaring that to be rendered down into corpse-starch is a citizen's final, glorious act of duty to the god emperor. The priests preach that even in death, you serve. This religious indoctrination is crucial. It pacifies the population, ensuring they do not rebel against the horrifying reality of their eventual fate. It transforms a logistical nightmare into a sacred, undeniable sacrament. Consider the sheer psychological detachment required to operate within this system. To a guildsman, a towering pile of human corpses is not a tragedy. It is a raw material depot. They must meticulously separate the corrupted or mutated bodies from the pure stock, ensuring the resulting starch is not tainted by chaos or genestealer DNA. It is a grueling, endless sorting process. They calculate the yield of a human life in calories and shelf life, entirely stripping away the identity, the soul, and the humanity of the deceased. This absolute commodification of human life is the true horror of the Imperial architecture. It is not the demons in the warp or the alien swarms that define the grimdark nature of Warhammer for OK. It is the cold, calculated bureaucracy that looks at a mourning family and only sees in harvested protein. The Corpse Guilds represent the ultimate triumph of brutal utilitarianism over human empathy. They are the undeniable proof that in the 41st millennium, humanity has sacrificed its soul just to keep its physical body breathing. If you are captivated by these dark truths and want to support our continued decoding of the Warhammer for OK universe, consider leaving a like, subscribing to the Silent Imperium, joining our Patreon. Your support allows us to delve deeper into the archives and bring these grim realities to light. Now, let us step onto the processing line itself and experience the sensory nightmare of the rendering vats. To truly comprehend the horror of the Corpse Guilds, you must step off the polished observation decks of the Pale Consorts and descend onto the manufacturing floor. The transition is violent. Before you even see the machines, the environment physically assaults you. The ambient temperature hovers near boiling, baking the air into a suffocating, humid haze. You are immediately hit by a solid wall of industrial heat, generated by the colossal furnace vats boiling away the moisture of a million harvested corpses. Then comes the smell. It is not the simple, natural stench of decomposition. The Corpse Guilds are brutally efficient. They do not let valuable meat rot. Instead, you are breathing in the sickeningly sweet, heavy aerosol of rendered human fat. It coats the back of your throat like hot grease. Beneath that cloying sweetness is the sharp, metallic tang of oxidized blood and the acrid, choking smoke of scorched bone being reduced to ash. It is a permanent scent you can physically taste. If the smell does not break your sanity, the noise certainly will. The auditory landscape of a recycling facility is a deafening, rhythmic nightmare. There is the constant, earth-shaking thud of the primary macerators, colossal iron jaws designed to crush femurs and rib cages into workable paste. It is a mechanical heartbeat that rattles your teeth in your gums. Above this deep, metallic rumble is the high-pitched, agonizing screech of industrial rotary saws slicing through frozen, hardened biomatter. Amidst this sensory hell, the human element labors on. The lying workers are wretched, broken creatures, born into the toxic fumes and destined to die within them. Most are entirely deaf by their early adolescent years, their eardrums permanently ruptured by the unrelenting industrial thunder. They communicate solely through sharp, jerky hand signals, their faces hidden behind heavy, chem-stained rebreathers. Their pale skin is perpetually slick with a grim mixture of toxic sweat and the pulverized, bloody mist of the very people they are currently processing. Now imagine standing there, feeling the grated iron floor beneath your heavy boots. It is permanently slick, coated in a dark, viscous slurry of industrial lubricant and stray biological runoff. You are tasked with guiding massive iron hooks, dragging bloated or frozen specimens toward the central Brandon moors. You are working a brutal 16-hour shift on half rations. Your muscles are screaming. Your vision is blurring at the edges, and the sheer drop into the grinding teeth is only mere inches away. Accidents in these facilities are not just common. They are a cold, mathematical certainty built into the daily administratum quotas. A momentary lapse in concentration, a single foot slipping on a patch of bloody grease, is all it takes. The heavy iron hook catches your frayed sleeve instead of the dead cargo. You lose your balance. In a terrifying instant, you are dragged over the rusted safety rails. The colossal gears below do not care. Flesh is flesh. There is a desperate scream, but it is instantly drowned out by the hungry roar of the macerators. The machines simply choose, completely indifferent to the frantic thrashing of a living human. The red warning lights do not flash. The production line does not hold for even a second. You simply become tomorrow's ration. If you are captivated by the brutal, unforgiving realities of this universe, ensure you subscribe to the Silent Imperium for more. For the workers left standing safely on the platform, there is absolutely no time to mourn. There is no frantic, heroic effort to shut down the machines or retrieve the shredded remains of their friend. That would be an unacceptable delay of Imperial production. Instead, a masked supervisor merely logs the loss of a laborer alongside an unexpected addition to the protein vat. You simply wipe the fresh splatter of blood from your rebreather visor, grip your iron hook tighter, and pull the next body forward. To truly grasp the dark heart of the Imperium, you must strip away your modern morality. In our current era, the desecration of a corpse is an unthinkable crime, a profound violation of human dignity. But what if dignity is a luxury that your species can no longer afford? In the 41st millennium, the moral axis has violently shifted. To leave a body to rot in the ground is not respectful. It is fundamentally treasonous. Consider this profound philosophical inversion. The Imperium does not measure morality by comfort or sentiment, but by absolute utility. Every drop of water, every ounce of synthesized protein, and every joule of energy belongs to the God Emperor. Therefore, your physical vessel is not your own private property. It is merely leased to you for the duration of your labor. To bury a corpse is to steal valuable biological resources from the collective survival of humanity. This concept is ruthlessly enforced by the ecclesiarchy, the massive religious apparatus of the Imperium. They preach the strict doctrine of the heresy of waste. Priests stand before the starving masses in the lower hives, aggressively declaring that holding a dead relative is an insult to those who still fight. They reframe the horrific grinding of human bones into a noble, Final sacrifice. Even in death, you are feeding the Emperor's Gran, eternal war machine. Let us analyze the chilling logic behind this belief. If a hive city of 100 billion souls suddenly decided to practice traditional burials, the entire ecosystem would collapse within a single generation. There is simply no space, and more importantly, there is an excruciating lack of alternative nutrition. The Corpse Guilds do not exist merely out of arbitrary cruelty. They exist because the alternative is planetary extinction. The cruelty is a necessary byproduct of mathematics. You must understand that the Imperium has fully weaponized desperation. When a mother feeds her children a pale block of corpse-starch, she is not committing a sin in the eyes of her faith. She is partaking in a sacred, terrible communion. The dead are sustaining the living, providing the very fuel needed to keep the manufacturums churning out lascans and artillery shells. To refuse this system is to condemn your entire species to the encroaching darkness. So, what happens when you actively rebel against this utilitarian nightmare? What if you try to preserve the sanctity of the dead in a hidden crypt deep in the Underhive? You immediately become a heretic. The Adeptus Arbites will shatter your reinforced doors, execute you for resource theft, and drag both your freshly killed body and the hidden corpse straight to the rendering vats. In this brutal galaxy, the only true sin is failing to be useful. The human mind is remarkably resilient, capable of enduring unimaginable horrors for the sake of survival, but it has limits. You cannot spend your entire life submerged in the boiling, blood-slicked hell of the Corpse Guilds without it fundamentally altering your psychology. To spend decades dissecting, grinding, and boiling your fellow citizens is to invite a very specific, deeply insidious form of madness. The boundary between the living and the dead begins to violently blur. At first, the detachment is a necessary defense mechanism. You must view the corpses merely as quotas, as cold mathematics, just to get through the grueling shifts. But eventually, this extreme desensitization metastasizes into something far darker. When you spend every waking hour surrounded by raw, butchered meat, you start to view all human flesh, even the living, as nothing more than walking protein. The sanctity of life is completely hollowed out by the relentless hum of the Mace Raiders. In the Warhammer 40K universe, extreme, concentrated emotion always draws the attention of the war. A corpse processing facility is a monument to despair, suffering, and the callous destruction of the human form. The psychic echo of billions of unmourned deaths pools in the shadows of the manufacturums. And in that suffocating darkness, entities from the Imperium begin to listen. They feed on the mindless butchery and the suppressed rage of the overworked laborers. The most terrifying consequence of this environment is the emergence of the corpse grinder cults. You might assume that the Lord of Blood, Khorne, only favors glorious combat and heavily armored warriors. But Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows. To the chaos god of slaughter, the colossal grinding halls of a hive world are perfectly functioning temples. The workers wielding bone saws and heavy cleavers are his unwitting, perfect priests. The corruption takes root subtly. It begins with a twisted craving. The tasteless, grey corpse-starch no longer satisfies the hunger of the line workers. They start hoarding the raw, unprocessed flesh, consuming it in secret beneath the deafening roar of the machines. They begin to hear whispered promises in the grinding of the gears, a dark, rhythmic mantra demanding more. The Lord of Skulls offers them a terrible liberation from their miserable, subservient existence. Soon, the dead are simply not enough to satisfy the growing bloodlust. The cultists realize that fresh, screaming meat holds a vitality that the frozen corpses lack. The transition from passive recycler to active predator is swift and brutal. They turn their heavy industrial tools, the rotary saws, the hook chains, the heavy cleavers, against their overseers and fellow citizens. The slaughterhouse expands beyond the walls of the Corpse Guild and spills into the general Underhive. As the workers fully embrace their cannibalistic heresy, the warp rewards them. They are starved. Broken bodies undergo grotesque transformations, bulging with unnatural, demonic muscle. Their heavy, blood-stained industrial aprons become the holy vestments of their new, violent religion. The heavy iron masks they wore to block out the stench of the vats are welded to their faces, twisted into the terrifying, horned visages of corny demons. They become avatars of pure, unadulterated butchery. When a corpse grinder cult finally initiates a full uprising, the resulting devastation is absolute. And like typical gang warfare or political rebellions, these cultists do not fight to conquer territory or steal wealth. They fight for the sole purpose of harvesting fresh meat for the Lord of Battles. They storm the Hive blocks like a swarm of ravenous locusts, dragging screaming families back to the grinding vats while the machines roar in hungry anticipation. This is the ultimate, tragic irony of the Imperium's extreme utilitarianism. The very system implemented to save the Hive City from starvation inevitably births the nightmare that will consume it. By reducing humanity to a mere resource, the Adeptus Administratum creates the perfect breeding ground for chaos. The Corpse Guilds, designed to sustain life, become factories of demonic slaughter, proving that some survival strategies are far worse than death itself. 7. The utilitarian nightmare when you step back from the blood-slit floors of the manufactorums and view the Imperium on a macro scale. A chilling realization sets in. The Adeptus Administratum does not mandate the grinding of human corpses out of some cartoonish malice. The cruelty is not the point. The cruelty is merely the byproduct of a dying species desperately trying to delay its own extinction. The true, suffocating nightmare of the Corpse Guilds is that this macabre system makes absolute, undeniable sense. In a hostile galaxy actively trying to consume humanity from every conceivable angle, humanity has decided it must consume itself first just to hold the line. This is the central, agonizing paradox of the Emperor's realm. In order to protect the divine sanctity of the human species on a cosmic scale, the Imperium must completely obliterate the dignity of the human individual. You are stripped of your name, your history, and your soul. In the ledger of survival, you are nothing more than a temporary, walking repository for highly valuable calories. It is entirely natural to look at the grinding vats and view them as the ultimate punishment for a failing society. But you must understand that Corpse-Starch is not a penalty inflicted upon the weak. It is the very foundation of Imperial survival. Without the continuous, calculated recycling of dead flesh, the mighty armies of the Astra Militarum would starve in their trenches. The Hive factories producing the endless streams of munitions would fall agonizingly silent. To reject the corpse tithe is to invite immediate, total annihilation at the hands of the alien. Consider the profound, generational tragedy playing out every single day in the lower levels of a Hive city. When a starving citizen sits down to eat their pale, tasteless block of corpse-starch, they are participating in a dark, inescapable communion. They are literally consuming the synthesized, compressed essence of their own ancestors. They must eat the past to fuel their miserable present. They endure this horrifying diet for one sole purpose: to survive long enough to breed the next generation of laborers and soldiers. And that future generation will, inevitably, feed upon them when their overworked bodies finally collapse. It is a biological Ouroboros, a dying serpent violently eating its own tail in the dark. The Corpse Guilds are simply the rusted iron teeth of that unending cycle. There is no escape from this utilitarian nightmare. No higher plane of existence waiting for the faithful under-Hive worker. The Imperium has mathematically calculated that human suffering, endlessly recycled, is the most efficient fuel source available in a galaxy devoid of hope. In many philosophical traditions across human history, there is a comforting belief that we are all made of stardust, destined to return to the peaceful cosmos. But in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, such romanticism is a fatal weakness. You are not stardust. You are a highly organized collection of biological assets. Your life is merely a temporary release of water, calcium, and protein, granted to you by the cold grace of the master of mankind. When you gaze upon the awe-inspiring, towering spires of an imperial hive city, you must remember the dark truth of its foundation. It is not merely constructed from cold rockrete and tempered plasteel. It is mortared with the compressed bones and boiled fat of trillions of forgotten souls. The Imperial Corpse Guilds stand as the ultimate testament to humanity's desperate will to survive, proving that in this decaying empire, even the grave offers no rest. You are matter, and until the universe burns, you belong to the Emperor. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey into the darkest depths of Warhammer for OK lore. If you wish to uncover more horrifying truths of the galaxy, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the Silent Imperium, and leave a comment below with the topic we should decode next. Until then, walk in the Emperor's light, and never waste your ration.